We're recording.
I'd like to thank everybody that's shown up today for what I think will be a very interesting program. I just want to thank very much Clemens for having given up his part of his Sunday to help us out and his time for helping to promote this. We don't very often have travelogues as such, but I thought today would be an interesting one for us to do because it gives us a window into what goes on at the mine level in Africa, which is one of those areas that not very many people actually get to visit. So, so hoping to open the window, open the door on how things are, where the stones are found, because a lot of people really have no idea, I don't think, how difficult the conditions are where a lot of the gems that we take for granted come from. So today I'm hoping that our speaker, our presenter, Scott Sucher, will be able to enlighten us visually and auditorily with some of the information about the sources for our African gems that we take for granted, I think, quite often. And just a little bit of a heads up, next month's program, I think, is also going to be interesting because we're going to have another tour of a totally different sort. We've had a sub program sort of in the making for a little while now, and we have to thank our wonderful friend in the British Museum of Natural History. Thank you so much for Robin for having given us our first museum gem tour. But we're going to be getting a tour of the Museum of Natural History gem collection in New York City. And I don't think very many people have had a chance to see or will ever have a chance to see the stones at the level we're going to see them and have a chance to hear something of their history and the information about the importance of the various gems. And I think getting us to see the best of the best that are hidden away in our many museums is, I hope, will help educate us even more to see what could be, what is in the finest gem collections in the world, in the museums of the world, the great museums of the world. And hopefully, by seeing these, we'll encourage you to visit them and see them in person, because museums need our support. Anyway, today we're going to have a chance to learn a little bit more about what happens at the mining level in Africa, in both Kenya and Tanzania. And our presenter, Scott Sucher, has been here sitting at this window into education last month. Thank you, Scott, for stepping into the fray, and also spoke to us previously about diamonds, and is himself a very accomplished cutter, having faceted ettringite and sulfur, things that we, the normal people, have no idea how to do. And I laud him for his skills and his efforts. So with no further ado, I want you to welcome Scott Sucher to take us on a trip into Africa and into the gem mines, and hopefully see how it works when you want to buy stones in Africa, how it works when they mine them. So thank you, Scott, for giving us of your time and energy and sharing your knowledge and information and your visual window into African gem mining.
Well, good afternoon, evening, and morning, no matter where you all are. I'm Scott Sucher. Most of you know me, so I'm not going to belabor too many points here. I'm going to try to get my screen shared here.
That's the microphone.
If we can get a tiny bit more volume, Scott, that would be awesome.
The only way I can do that, I'll move the microphone closer. Is that better? Is that better, Ray? Oh, I can't hear you at all. You're muted. Somebody give me a thumbs up if my volume. Clemens? Okay, very good. All right. So where we're going to be going today is Voi, Kenya, which is the right-hand red bubble. And then we're going to slide over to Arusha, Tanzania. The geology in this area is extremely interesting, and we will touch on that in a little bit. But what makes it interesting is all the faulting and therefore chance for crystallization of a lot of different materials. Here's my contact information if anybody wants it, and I will show it again when we are done with today's program. All right, this whole thing started out back at the 2024 Tucson meeting. Well, this is Vter Young. He's a third generation gem rough dealer, very highly respected. And he lives in Voi, Kenya. And he came to me and said, "Hey, Scout, how'd you like to help me put together a tour group of gem cutters in August of 2025? I said, what the heck, why not? Nothing better to do next August. So we started to put this trip together. We had a total of 11 guests. Out of the 11 guests, we had 2 gemologists, 5 jewelers, 4 cutters, and 4 collectors. Obviously, some people wore more than one hat. But what it really helped us or allowed us to do is that with this broad breadth of experience, when it came to buying gemstones, everybody had their own personal and professional perspective, which made it quite the learning experience. We spent a total of 2 weeks in Africa, and in that time period, we visited 2 gem centers, 5 mines, and we had numerous buying opportunities for gem rough and incidentally mineral specimens. Some of the collectors contacted me ahead of time, and I passed it on to Vter to see if we can get some specimens showing up, and they were extremely pleased with what they saw. So basically, we met in Nairobi, and we traveled to the southeast down to Voi, then west towards Arusha, and then north up to Nairobi. One big circle. So the first place we're going to is Voi, Kenya, and 15 miles to the west is the Tata Hills. And this is a hotbed of geology. And what makes it such a hotbed is that this is a fracture zone, and I just did something to my computer, I'm not sure what, to expand this. Oh, this is going to be an issue. Anybody know what I might have done to touch a single key to zoom in? Okay, if not, I'm going to tell you what. Oh, there we go. Excellent. So this is the fracture zones in the Tata Hills. Now we're just going to overlay that on the geographical map. Unfortunately, I could not find any earthquake fault zones or any of that nature across a broader area. But you can imagine that if you have this kind of fracturing in this small an area, by the way, this is about 4 miles by 4 miles, you can imagine what the rest of it is like. And anybody who has a fundamental knowledge of geology, when you have that much faulting and folding and tectonic activity, it's just cracking the rock, allowing all kinds of mineral solutions to seep in and crystallize, which makes this particular area a real hotbed of gemstones. There are various mineral deposits there. You have graphite, which is the gray in this particular photograph. They also find asbestos. And what gem cutters are interested in is the corundum found in some of the pegmatites. And these are some of the corundum crystals that one of our mineral collectors happened to come across. All kinds of garnet. You name the garnet, it is found there. This is a piece of Marilani mint garnet that I picked up to cut, possibly resell at a later date. But this particular Marilani mint, for those unfamiliar with the material, 4 grams is a pretty good sized stone. This particular one is 42 grams. And even though it looks fractured, it's actually clean on the inside. You also get a lot of tourmaline there, found obviously in pegmatites. Here's a piece of chrome tourmaline that I picked up. And then kyanite and sillimanite. Now the trip itself. Everybody flew into Nairobi, and the first full day there we had a tanzanite viewing. And anybody who deals with tanzanite knows that there are severe restrictions on tanzanite export. The government has really clamped down. And the only official place you can now buy tanzanite is in the official government center in Marilani. So here's some of the tanzanite we had spread across the table. And in this, we were looking at it primarily to get introduced to the material from a gem cutter's perspective, talking about the properties and the inclusions, how would you cut the stuff in its orientation. Being one of the 3 trichroic minerals that I personally know, and as a gem cutter, it makes it kind of interesting that you can play with the optics, and depending how you orient the stone depends on what colors you get, and it also depends on whether it's been heat treated or not. The next day we did a 5-hour train ride down to Voi. The security at the train station in Voi is extremely tight. We went through 4 layers of security and 2 additional friskings. They take their security very, very serious down there. You really need to have your ducks in a row. Make it easy for them. They make it easy for you. And this is the typical scenery on the train ride. Along the way, we saw elephant, giraffe, ostrich, zebra, gazelle, all your typical major wildlife. And here's the motley crew once we arrived in Voi. Once we arrived in Voi, we checked into the Voi Wildlife Lodge. This is a wonderful hotel. It's literally on the border of Tsavo East National Park. We have 2 of our group in the foreground. The rest in the back, these are all the folks that are checking in from all over the planet to go on safaris in the national park. To give you an idea where the national park is and related to us, this is a picture taken from our 3rd floor window. You have the gazebo from the lodge there in the foreground. And right beneath that is where Tsavo National Park is. So we had the heartburn to just suffer through looking at the water buck and the zebra and any other wildlife that happened to come across. And this is taken from the eating area and the bar area at the lodge. You can see how close we are to the watering hole as it brings in the animals. And then here's another view, quite the large eating area. Well, that's Peter the elephant in the background. I'm not sure who named him, but his name lives on. Massive bull. This is not taken with a telephoto to give you an idea of how close we are to the wildlife. In the watering hole, by the way, the watering hole is half of it's man-made, half of it's natural. It's fed by a bore well, and they keep it filled to a certain level to attract the wildlife for the visitors. This is Henry the hippo, but we came to find out that it should be Henrietta, definitely a female. Just as an aside, I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to watch a hippopotamus poop, but when they do, their tail goes around like a propeller on an airplane, and it spreads the excrement about 20 feet in every direction. It's kind of funny to watch, but the reason they do this is that they're actually marking their territory. So there is a purpose behind it. The elephants there, their nickname are red elephants because all the ground there is a brilliant red earth, and when they roll in it, it turns red. This is taken shortly after the elephants walked under the platform to the gazebo. I tried to get there a little bit sooner. If I had, I could probably reach down and touch their backs. Here's a bunch of elephant at the watering hole. One of the nice things if you're into wildlife is watching animal behavior. We are close enough that on a quiet day, you can hear the water dripping off their trunks. You can also hear them blow bubbles when they first put their trunks into the water to clear the watering space out. And then there's always a chance that you get the 2 young ruffians, the 2 adolescents just goofing off in the watering hole. A lot of fun to watch. I got a lot of respect for the elephants. They are really no different than us in many, many different characteristics. I just happen to think that for the most part, we're more magnanimous than most human beings. But that's just a personal observation. That evening, we had an opportunity to buy rough at Vter's house. He invited everybody over for a barbecue. And you can see the parcels of stones and the lots of stones that are laying out. So it was a target-rich environment for a buying opportunity. And this is Philip, our driver on the left, and the shorter individual, that's Vter's 10-year-old son, a remarkable young man named Raymond, who is probably more mature than most 40-year-olds than I know. But he's a hoot to be around, a very knowledgeable individual, and he is learning to be fourth generation gem dealer. The next day, we piled into 2 vans and drove out to the mines. We start out on a nice paved road. These are the Tata Hills here. This particular slope hills is where your best color change garnet comes from. And of course, as you go in deeper, the roads get narrower. You have the occasional cattle jam, and there's all the typical wildlife available around here. We didn't see any, but there's a lot of elephant scat on the road. We were also cautioned about the snakes and large cats of different varieties that like to roam around. So when we had to stop out in the bush to relieve ourselves, everybody was on high alert. What I found interesting, all the little, I can't even call them hamlets that we passed through. Take a look at the construction here. And this is the typical construction out in the Kenyan bush. They use whatever they can. So you can see that center house built with mud and rock, held together with sticks that are lashed together with sheet metal as a roof and a sheet metal door. It's kind of interesting when you take a look at a scene like this, because these people are surviving in such an inhospitable environment, and they have really nothing to work with. And in many respects, it's kind of sad to take a look at people just sitting around, and you're thinking, my God, that could be the next astronaut, doctor, cure for cancer, whatever. And all these people, they work so dang hard, receive so little, and all they really want is opportunity to provide for themselves and their families, and hopefully their kids live better than they do. Here's our group at the first mine we visited. This is a Savorite mine. If you're not familiar with Savorite garnet, beautiful dark green garnet. It's a type of grossular. And we posed this picture with a piece of rough sitting on top of some of the Savorite. I'll call it country rock. And then just going down to the mine, I'm sure that many of you have had a similar experience. What was interesting as we were going down, there was so much graphite dust in the air. I really did wish we had masks. So for next year's trip, we're definitely going to be providing them for our visitors. This particular shaft goes down to 400 feet. Here we are at the 110 meter level. So we're down about maybe 340, 300. What makes it real interesting is that once we got down this deep, we realized we were visitors. We had bats. They didn't care that we were there other than we were disturbing them. They had no desire to bother us whatsoever. And these are rather small bats. I was kind of impressed. They were maybe 3 inches long. And they were flying around, and sometimes they would land within inches of your head. Now here, one of the mine manager, he's pointing at what they call an eye. If you're familiar with a blow in Australia, it's where the rock is fractured, just like here in the eye, and your mineral solution seeps in between the fractures. That's where you find your gemstones. So your best material comes out of these eyes. And here I am with my hand for scale at a much smaller one. It's kind of interesting to be in a mine like this, knowing that your hand could be mere inches from a fortune in garnet or whatever. Here's a piece that I picked up from the bottom of the mine. We were originally told that we were not allowed to collect. But then I picked this piece up. The mine manager was there, and I showed him the bits of green savorite garnet and just the other mineralization of the pyrite, the calcite, the quartz, the graphite. And I took a look at him. He gave me the thumbs up, indicating that I could keep it. So it now proudly resides in my living room. But if nothing else, just because of these green spots, I can say I have picked up savorite garnet personally out of the mine in Kenya. So bragging rights at the bar. Anywhere we went, we had an armed guard with us. They were actually there, you would think, bandits, and were carrying tons of money, which we were not. But they were there primarily for the animals, because all your big major animals and the smaller dangerous ones are there. Being a military guy, I walked over to them and I said, okay, I'm a military guy. And if you don't mind, if push comes to shove, I would at least like to know how to operate your weapon. So if you could show me the safety, how many rounds are in your clip, and then what's the cyclic rate of fire. Fortunately, that was not necessary, but it's better to have that knowledge, not need it, than the other way around. We couldn't go down into this other savorite mine because it was in operation. You can see the bags of waste rock coming out on the hoist. So there's a team down at the very bottom shoveling and filling these bags. And they come up to the top. The gentleman on the right in the white hat will slice the bags free from the hoist. A guy in the yellow hat picks up those bags and throw them into the back of the truck. They empty the bag and then throw them over the side. In this particular operation, this is just the waste rock. This is not where they're expecting to find any savorite. Any day that they start mining the savorite layer is when the mine owner shows up, because he wants to keep an eye on things and make sure nobody's pilfering. By the way, it's kind of interesting. In that first mine, you saw the hole similar to this one that we went down. You can imagine being 400 feet deep, and you have just lit the fuse to the dynamite. And now you have to run up 400 feet in elevation on a 20-degree slope over slippery graphite. Kind of gives you an idea of what some of these guys have to go through to earn a living. This gentleman is shoveling the country rock onto the drive for the hoist, and he puts the rock on there to maintain the proper amount of friction. So this is definitely a team effort. There's a nearby hill with the office building to this particular mine, and our parking lot is off to the left, maybe 200 yards. What I didn't realize until what I consider to be way too late is that if you keep your eyes open along the sides of the paths and all the way out to the parking lot and the path up to this hill, you can find savorite garnet. Well, these are two pieces that I found. Look at the color. Look at the clarity. Magnificent material. The only problem in this case is that each piece is about the size of a grain of sand. But as a gem cutter and being on location, you kind of breathe a little heavy. Your heart starts beating a little bit harder just being in the proximity of this kind of material. Well, that afternoon, we went back to the bar at the lodge with more buying. Now, this is Philip, our driver. He's also a licensed gemstone broker. And you can see some of the bags of material all over. Like I say, it was a target-rich environment if you're a gem cutter or a gemologist or a jeweler. The hardest part for us, though, is that sometimes you get a little distracted about what's in the background. All right, day two, we're going back out to the mines. In this particular day, we were passing by this sisal farm. And if you're not familiar with sisal, it's a very fibrous plant material that's used for backing carpets, amongst other things. Up at the top, you see these clusters that look like leaves. These are actually small plants. And at some part in their growth cycle, they're going to fall off. They drop to the ground, they take root, and this is how the plants propagate. And once again, you can see our road stretching off into the distance. Well, when you travel on it long enough, you finally get to the mine, and here's a panorama from the mine. Now, what I found interesting, according to both the miners and Vter, is that any square meter of the dirt that you're looking at could contain garnets, tourmaline, and Lord knows what else out there, potentially your corundums and other gemstone materials. Now, this individual here in the foreground with her nose close to the ground, she's checking things out. Why? Because here's a non-zoomed in actual size picture of what they're looking at. And these are just gem quality garnets sitting on the ground. You can see flakes of the bits of red. And in the first 5 minutes, I found a small piece, probably 5 millimeters across, turned out to be a piece of crystalline savorite. So again, a target-rich environment for rough materials. Now, this particular mine is done with surface mining. It's screen washing. And you need to dig down to the bedrock layer, which in this particular case is not a big deal. It's only 1.5 feet to 2 feet down. And this is where your biggest and best material comes from. And I have a piece of non-cuttable green tourmaline, about 20 carats, that we found. Next year's trip, we're going to set it up so that we can do this all day long for those that want to dig all day long. And by the way, you get to keep what you find. So that's kind of an added bonus. Here is one of the miners' houses. Again, not terribly luxurious, but it does give you an idea of what these guys go through to get these little treasures that all of us enjoy. Here's the second mine we went to that day. These guys are digging down through a very hard clay. Think of it as a caliche layer. This is a roughly 10-foot by 10-foot square shaft. They are digging by hand. They're going, and it's going to take them 3 to 4 days to get down the 12 feet to the hopefully gravel bearing layer that's 1 to 2 feet deep. And with any luck, they'll find something that makes all their labor worthwhile. Now, when I was talking with Vter for next year's trip, I asked them, you know, when we visit, we're taking our time away from the miners. What should we pay them if we wanted to dig all day long? What would be a fair day's wage? And he said, if we give them $10 a piece for their entire day worth of work, they'll consider that a fortune. Think about that for a minute. You're digging like this for 8 to 12 hours a day, and $10 is what you are hoping you'd be lucky enough to get. No, thank you very much. The next day, we went to the Voi Gem Center. The gem centers exist in Voi and also in Arusha, Tanzania, because it gives the miners a centralized location in which to sell their wares. Now, each of these vertical posters, if you look closely, you can see them numbered. These are the companies that are on each floor and the type of material they deal with. Having these gem centers also allows the government to maintain control over their raw materials. And when we were there, Vter, like I say, third generation, so anybody within several hundred miles knew of him. He announced several months ahead of time that he was bringing in a group of gem buyers. So you can imagine the crowds that we had. This is the room that we were personally set up in. So we were just sitting around waiting for the appropriate time for all the dealers to come in. And this may not look like a large group of sellers, but if you hang a left down the hall, they extend down the hall. Then if you turn right at the end of that hall, they extend down that hall. There were many dozens, if not 1 to 200 sellers there. It was a target-rich buying opportunity for us. And once they started letting the sellers in, it was controlled chaos. It was very controlled, but kind of pandemonium. Like if you can imagine doing this for 4 hours. What made it fun, at least for me, and I think for everybody else, is that a dealer would throw a package or a parcel of stones in front of you. And if I didn't like it, I would just wave my hand over it and it would get removed. If I wanted to wheel and deal, I would just hand them my uh, calculator function on my phone, have them type in a price, and then the negotiations would begin. Now, one of the really nice things about this particular group, we all had our separate interests on what we wanted and what we were looking for and hoping to find. I know, and others did the same thing. If I came across something that I didn't want for whatever reason, but I knew somebody else did, I would make sure that seller went to that other person so they could make their pitch. So it was a very congenial atmosphere and highly exciting. When we got done at the Gem Center, we went to Savo East National Park. And I just took a picture of these beautiful birds. I've never seen them before. This is a non-zoomed in picture from the entrance of Savo National Park to our hotel. So that gives you an idea that we are literally right there. And of course, all the usual. The gazelles, they were a lot of fun to watch running. Even ran across a couple of oryx, absolutely magnificent beasts. Next day, we had our drive to Arusha. The Google says it's 4 hours and 21 minutes. Do not believe it. What was a killer for me is that we're passing within 15 miles of the Marirani Hills. Now, why is the Marirani Hills important? Because this is where your tanzanite is found. And you can see our little blue band of our road up on the top of the picture, and it's about 15 miles south to the Mariranis. And your tanzanite is found in a band that's roughly 4 by 1 miles, and the shafts are currently 3,000 feet deep. So they've been digging in these things since what I believe the 1969. Okay, now as far as the tanzanite formation, that started about 580 million years ago. Fairly flat terrain. You got a carbon-rich mudstone layer laid down, and it's collecting vanadium from the organic graphite and subjected to slightly later crystallization at 80,000 psi and 650 centigrade. A couple of dozen million years later, you start squeezing it and heating up a little bit more to 145,000 psi, about 925 C. And this forces your vanadium, titanium, and calcium to migrate and start crystallizing. Then a little bit later, you get some deformation, apply a little bit more pressure and heat, and it converts your titanium-3 into titanium-4. So you have an electron transfer between the titanium or between the vanadium and the titanium. And what's happening is that the titanium-3 as a chromophore colors your gemstones yellow. Now your titanium-4 is colorless. So when you get rid of that yellow, the blue comes through, and that's what gives you that marvelous color. And then all that's left, dig until you find it. I have heard that when the tanzanite first came out of the ground, you could get these chunks that were hundreds of carats in size, and they were all this brownish material, which was pretty ugly. But then somebody learned that you could heat it, doing this electron transfer in step 3, and then you get the blue color. Then Tiffany gets involved, and now it's game over. When we refueled on our trip going to Arusha, it was kind of interesting. I've been all over the planet, and this is the first time I've seen a sign like this. And apparently, you can test your gasoline before it gets put into your tank to make sure it doesn't have any water in it. And if it meets your satisfaction, they put your sample in the tank, and you can keep pumping, and off you go. This is a baobab tree, definitely different beast. This monster is probably about 45 feet in circumference, so 15 feet in diameter. And each one is kind of its own ecosystem because the leaves are chewed on, the fruits are chewed on, the bark provides all kinds of stuff. They are an amazing plant. Notice here a 4-hour tour. It's kind of like Gilligan's Island, where the tiny bus was tossed. And if it wasn't for the courage of the fearless driver, we would all be lost. We are on a gravel road. It is a single lane gravel road. No, but notice we have somebody to the left. It's not captured in the picture, but we have somebody also on the right. So we are on a single lane gravel road with 3 lanes. It was highly interesting. I have to admit, the entire time we never saw one car accident. However, it reminds me of a line from a Robin Williams skit, "You're gonna die." But the drivers there, they know what they're doing, and it's amazingly polite. Now we have our buying day, where we're all just kind of sitting around. To me, Arusha was the big show. Voi was just practice. So here we are, we just have it all sitting around. We all have our different pieces of equipment laying around on the table. If somebody needed a polariscope, somebody else would have it. You'd borrow it, or a UV light, or scale, or whatever. There was a lot of sharing going on, not just knowledge and information, but also equipment. And everybody here was just a hoot and a half. And then we let in the buyers or the sellers. Oh boy, you can see I'm sitting in front of a lot of garnet here. Lord knows what's going on at the other table. Now, this particular scene that I'm going to show you is very typical. And again, it goes on for 4 hours. The anteroom that's behind this gentleman, Sophie, in the maroon jacket, is absolutely packed with sellers, and they go around the hall. It was absolutely amazing. If you went there to buy, you could buy. When we got done, we went to this place called Caribou Shanga. This is kind of a social enterprise that hires those with disabilities and teaches them crafts so they can earn a living. One of them is glass blowing, and the other is weaving. As far as I was concerned, we didn't spend nearly enough time there that afternoon. There were so many fascinating cultural things going on, and we will be extending our time there next year. Then there's the second day in Arusha. It's basically a replay of the first day. You can see these 2 folks inspecting this lot of aquamarine crystals. We did have to fill out, and this is official paperwork, as far as what we were buying, a description. So here for me, the top one says rhodolite garnet. It weighs 2.8 grams. And then we put in what we paid for the piece, and then we calculate the 10% commission. The 10% commission is the government's. Part of it goes to the government, part of it goes to the facility because they hire extra security and personnel to handle this massive influx of people. Then we got done that afternoon. We went to the African Art Gallery. This is sponsored by the Tanzanian government, I believe it is self-supporting, but they do host the works of over 1,500 Tanzanian artists. And if you're into art, especially African art, you can find anything to your heart's desire. And a lot of this, as far as I could tell, was museum quality. It was an amazing place from a cultural perspective. We are also going to be spending more time there next year. Then we have our drive back to Nairobi. Uh, Fortunately, this truly was a 4-hour tour, and it was good roads the entire way. Paved, it was wonderful. Now, it's a different culture. I saw this in the bathroom at the border with Kenya, where we were waiting to process through customs. Now, you can take a look at this sign and you go from a Western perspective, ew, oh my God, how disgusting. But if you actually take a look at it and the environment, here's a tough group of people out in the middle of nowhere where their only source of water is a muddy creek that usually has, we'll say, dirt in it from various animals, and you never know what you're going to catch. And it's a very, very hard, crude, and tough environment, and the people must be the same way. So if you can find water, even if it's out of a toilet, it's cleaner than what you can find in your normal neighborhood. So when you take a look at it from that perspective, they deserve our respect. And we were literally came back through the heart of Maasai country. And it was fascinating watching the people walking across along the roads. What I found interesting here is your goat herder. He is out in the middle of we're probably on the Kenya side of the border here. He's out there protecting his flock, and all he has is a 6-foot long staff. And what is he protecting his flock from? The little stuff: elephants, lions, packs of wild dogs, hyenas. And they do this on a routine basis. Think about how tough these folks really are. It's absolutely amazing. And of course, along the way, we pass many markets. Here's a fruit market, here's a pottery market. As we got closer to Nairobi, you start getting folks with their carts. But also, once you're in Nairobi proper, you can be driving along, and the markets are now along the road. Just throw out your blanket and sell your wares. This can go on for a mile. And it seems to me it's kind of like our modern department stores where everybody seems to be selling the same thing. And every vendor there is just hoping that they can make enough to eat that night. In Nairobi, they have a giraffe center. The giraffe center is really cool. This is where giraffes come to get rehabilitated, just like Arlo Guthrie would sing. When you enter, you get a little cup full of giraffe food, and you can feed the giraffes. And here I am, and the proper technique, in case you were wondering, is you place the food pellet right underneath the upper lip on the tongue, and then they will suck it in. You end up with a fairly messy tongue, just full of giraffe saliva, but it's the price of admission. And anything you happen to drop, the warthogs will be happy to clean up. It was interesting. At one point, every single giraffe, they bunched up and they all looked in the same direction. And I think they stood there for 15 minutes, not even flicking a tail. We don't know what they were alerting on, but apparently Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I live, is similar to Nairobi in that we have our problems with large mammals. In Albuquerque, you can get a rather large brown bear walking into the middle of town. Apparently in Nairobi, the same thing can happen, but it's the issue is with lions. So we think perhaps a lion or two was going through a nearby ravine, searching for food. The giraffe saw it, we did not. Interestingly enough, this is a very important sign. If you have food in your hand and the giraffes know it and you turn your back, they will headbutt you. And if you have no idea what kind of force can be generated, do a Google search for two giraffes fighting and watch them on YouTube. If they hit you, they will hit you hard enough that it will break bones and you can see your house all the way from Nairobi. So this is a very important sign. And if you're careless, it can certainly happen. On our way to and from the Giraffe Center, we encountered the second largest slum in Africa. And this goes back to my previous statement of very hardworking folks could be the find the next cure for cancer, and all they want is opportunity. Hey, our last day there, Vter came in and he surprised us, those of us that were remaining, with these lots of Marilani mint garnet. This is a type of grossular garnet. Some of you folks would be more educated than I on it. I kind of consider it as a lighter version of Savorite. But apparently what separates the two, even though they could be very similar in color, the Marilani mint has a function that the Savorite doesn't. And it's very easy to test. All you have to do is subject it to ultraviolet light, and it fluoresces this brilliant orange. It's absolutely gorgeous. So maybe we could have a sidebar discussion at the conclusion of this meeting as far as the differences between Savorite and Marilani mint. And so once we were done with wheeling and dealing, we'll catch our planes. And by the way, this is my 42-gram Marilani mint. And Vter catching up, doing some last minute wheeling and dealing for me to get my garnet. It took 2 days for him to find the owner so we could negotiate with him directly. But Vter, again, is also a licensed gemstone broker in both Kenya and Tanzania. So he has to make sure all the paperwork is flowing correctly and properly. So we're done. We had an outstanding group. We had 6 buying opportunities throughout the entire trip. Plenty of animals. This is a picture my wife took for a sunrise. This kind of a view was not at all unusual when we were at the Wildlife Lodge. Oh, the horror, the hardship. And we plan on doing it again next year in the first 2 weeks of August. We're going to do some minor changes. Everybody in the group, if they were making a comment about something they liked or something they didn't like, I would make a note on my phone. And by the time I got back home, I had 3 pages of single-spaced comments. Yes, we had our, I'll say, occasional difficulties, but everybody was there for the adventure, and they even the issues made the trip fun. It was just such a good time. All right, I'm done. So does anybody have any questions?
Always.
I'm going to
I've
figure
got-
out here how to
I've
get
got
rid of
a few questions, but I'll let others go ahead first.
Yeah, go ahead and ask. You're first.
Okay. I got a couple here, to be honest with you. So, I mean, I've dealt with Vter a couple times, but I know him as Peter. Is that his real name, Peter?
His given name is Peter. And
Okay.
I know this because when I had to transfer money to him, that is his first name. And I asked him about Vter, but somebody once confused his name with Vter, and this is how he has become to be known as it in the industry. It is kind of his trademark at this point.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I'm curious, of course, now about like the parcels and stones you're looking at. So I got a couple questions there, like the parcel prices, how do they relate to buying parcels that are, get brought over to North America? How much money should somebody take with them if they're interested in buying a bunch of rough, and in what currency?
Okay, the currency is not a problem because Vter has a stateside bank which has a Kenya a branch in Voi. So all you have to do is transfer money into his bank here, and then you can pull it out there. And everything is done in US dollars. Once in a while, a seller might quote it in Kenyan or Tanzanian shillings. So you kind of have to make sure your conversion is correct. As far as prices for the rough, it kind of depends on how hard you negotiate and how desperate the seller is to make the sale. But I know that the piece of chrome tourmaline I bought, it's about 25 carats, cost
Nice.
me $225. I bought something similar in Tucson that was exponentially more expensive than that.
Right.
I'm not saying that the deals are readily available across the board, but with good negotiation, you can get some quite a good deal. Now, as far as how much money to take, that's a personal issue. But I would brief new buyers is that, let's say the entire trip cost you $6,000. Well, if you take $2,000 to spend on rough and you can get a 3x markup, you break even. So if you want to make money, take more than $2,000 to spend. Now that's a broad paintbrush, but it gets you in the ballpark.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it. My last question really, well, maybe two more. So, I understand, if I understand correctly, do the Maasai not own the Tanzanite mines or have
That
a
one, I'm
stake
not
in it?
qualified. That one I'm not qualified to answer. I
Fair
would
enough.
hope that some Maasai organization has dibs on it just because it's their homeland,
That's what I
but I
understood.
honestly don't know.
Last question. I have some mobility issues. I can walk, and I can stand and all that, but I can't walk or stand for any great distances. Obviously, if I went, I wouldn't be going down into the mines and stuff, but is there a whole lot of walking, like even when it comes to the gem buying opportunities and that sort of thing?
No, no more than what you would normally encounter. The level of difficulty going down into the first mine, going down 400 feet on a scale of 1 to 10, that's probably a 9.
Yeah.
And, if you have any kind of physical infirmity, we don't recommend you go down. But you
Yeah.
would be spending your time now up topside, which is what my wife did. And she had a positively wonderful time talking with the miners that were topside, asking questions on how they did what they did, and just general conversation concerning their aspect of the industry. So you can make it as physically demanding as you're willing to put up with. But all the mines we visited, we drove right there, and all you had to do was just get out, and you could sit in chairs that we had scattered throughout, or you could sit in the vans.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I am thinking of going next year too, by the way. I couldn't make it this year.
Well, just send me an email. Chris, here's my information. Just take a quick shot of it with your cell phone if it's readily
Yep.
available. And just stay in contact and we can keep you apprised. And even for those that are expressing some interest now, saying, hey, I'm thinking about going, I can send you our tentative itinerary so you can kind of get a feel for what's going on and what we're doing.
Thank you.
Scott, I'm sorry, just a quick question, a couple things. If someone wants to go into Africa, I'm sure there has to be some medical things you have to do ahead of time. And I'm just wondering how many different kinds of shots did you have to have before you went on the trip?
I was kind of surprised to go into Kenya or Tanzania. The only required shot is yellow fever. Everything else is suggested. Now, you can get onto the CDC's website, and there is a slew of them. The typhoid, cholera, yellow fever, rabies, the chickamauga virus, whatever. That is a conversation, though, as far as what you should take. It's a conversation that you need to take with your healthcare provider and a personal decision as far as your level of risk. Now, we also have to take the malaria medication, but that's, in my case, was a pill thing. Just be prepared for it to turn your urine bright orange for 2 weeks. But that's all right. Um, but definitely get together with your healthcare provider.
Okay, just a quick other question is, I've gotten the feeling over the years that Vter tries to encourage the support of the miners and fair trade pricing to help them get a good deal when they're selling their material. I'm asking, I guess, is this trip furthering that sort of aim and desire to give the miners a better leg up with fair trade pricing?
When it comes to the fair trade pricing, I think that's kind of between the buyer and the seller. Um, like in my particular case, for me, it was a moral conundrum. Do I want to get a good deal on anything I buy? The capitalist system. So the answer is certainly. However, you take a look at how hard these people work. Now they could open up, let's say they throw a bag maybe containing 400 carats of rhodolite garnet in front of you. That is maybe 30 or 40 pieces. So you're talking good sized garnet. And you can ask them how much, and their opening price could be $10,000. And you counter with 150, and they'll go, okay, fine, I'll take it. Um, as a capitalist, you want to get it for as little as possible, but as a humanist, you want to make sure that they get a fair deal. So that's kind of a personal decision.
Yeah.
But you can definitely get some inexpensive materials there.
Clemens, do you have any questions from chat that we can pose to Scott?
Yeah, there is one from Chase Scott Robbins. For the mint garnet, do you use long wave or short wave UV?
You can use either, it'll fluoresce, but I believe the short wave is more reactive.
And Gary is asking, with so many cells in line, how do you tell one that it's in front of the line to hold on while you look at everybody else's parcels? Or is it like Tucson, you buy it when you see it and then hope for the best?
Yes. In a nutshell, there are folks in our group that bought rough that I would have given my eye teeth to have been able to see it first. And I am sure it works both ways. So it's kind of the luck of the draw whether you're going to see any given stone right off the bat. And you just have to live with the philosophy of, if one eludes you because somebody else saw it first, that's just the way it goes. But it is very distracting because you're trying to wheel and deal for the parcel in front of you, and you're just about to close the deal, and then some other seller throws a parcel on the table to the guy next to you, and you're going, "Ooh, I got to look at that." So now you have a conundrum.
That pile of aqua got me worked up.
Yeah, it was quite impressive. Now, I was not interested in the aqua, and there were many parcels that I passed because here at the house, I have almost 1,200 lots of faceting rough, not pieces,
Wow.
lots. And for me to buy another piece of garnet, rhodolite garnet, it's like, good Lord, I have it up to like 50 carats upstairs. What do I need more for?
Right.
But in retrospect, I kind of shot myself in the foot because to get good quality, I would even say high quality rhodolite garnet for an inexpensive price, same thing with, say, colorless topaz. It's outstanding material when I teach faceting to my students for them to practice on. They get a stone of value rather than just cutting a marble. They get a stone of value when they're done that they can give to, mom or sister or whoever. So I passed up some good deals. It will not happen again next year.
Do you sell rough?
Questions?
Um, I don't sell rough. but I have been thinking about selling some of my rough because I have more than, obviously with 1,200 or almost 1,200 lots, I have more than I'm ever going to cut. But the flip side of that is that my grandson will thank me greatly when he inherits it all. So
Agreed.
again, torn between two different things. But if somebody sees something and wants to buy it, I'm willing to make a deal because I need to get my, I need more money for next year.
Thank you.
All right. Any more questions? Well, I just want to remind everyone to be aware that this program is at the kindness of Clemens and the university. And unfortunately, for our October program, where we're going to be looking at the gem collection from the American Museum of Natural History, to this point, we do not have a Zoom um, program that we can use. Someone who can, so if someone amongst you who are watching right now could let me know if they have a Zoom license and the willingness and the ability to record the program in October, please get a hold of me and let me know so that we can you can send us a link that I can send out to everybody in the invitations. And to that end, the person that's going to be speaking next month is Nicole Childs, who recently was appointed the collections manager for the Department of Earth and Planetary Sciences for the American Museum of Natural History in New York. I've known her for many years, and it was sort of interesting in Denver. Had a chance to talk about Gemquest, and she seemed very excited about the possibility of doing a program to share with our Gemquest audience on the gem collection at the museum. And this is important because museums live and die oftentimes on what comes in through the door. And so we want to encourage and excite people about going to museums by giving them little intimate tours, such as we're trying to do with this program on the end of October, to let them see what is available digitally, and then maybe encourage you to come in and see what it looks like in real life, which is very definitely worth it. So I'm looking very much forward to the program in October, but I do desperately need somebody to step forward and help us out with the Zoom aspect of it so it can be recorded. So other than that, thank you very much again, Clemens, for your help and your technological expertise. Thank you all for your participation and attendance, and tell your friends to come next month because I think it's going to be a well worthwhile program to attend. And Scott, thanks for your time, energy, and your input. As everybody knows, we're a non-commercial programming. We're nonpartisan, so this is a slight side turn, but I thought it'd be worth it for us to see and hear what it's like at ground level when it comes to getting gems in Africa. So thanks, Scott, for sharing. Thank you all for attending, and looking forward to anybody who can help us with a Zoom program for the month of October.